calling Vanguard to have your information of how can we help you today.
I recently changed all the investment holdings in my Vanguard brokerage account from index mutual funds to their equivalent exchange-traded funds, or ETFs. Now, Vanguard refers to this process of changing from a mutual fund to an ETF as converting. And there are funds at Vanguard which can be converted from a mutual fund to an equivalent ETF. And in this video, I'll discuss why you might want to convert your Vanguard mutual funds to ETFs, or why you might not want to do this. And I'll also show you exactly how to do this conversion process at Vanguard. And even though this conversion was done in my taxable brokerage account, it was done tax-free without creating a taxable event or generating any capital gains. Now, avoiding a taxable event is very important in this situation. You don't want to generate any surprise tax bills. In my situation, for example, I've been invested in some of these funds for 10 years, and at this point, these holdings have sizable gains, and I certainly wouldn't want to pay capital gains tax on them just to convert them into ETFs. So the first question is, why might you want to convert your mutual funds to ETFs at Vanguard? And many of Vanguard's popular index mutual funds have these equivalent ETFs, and the mutual fund and the ETF are practically the exact same investment. They are really set up as two share classes of the same fund with identical portfolios of underlying stocks or bonds. But if we look closely, there are some subtle differences. The biggest difference is the way they trade, or don't trade. In the case of mutual funds, they don't trade at all. Mutual funds are bought and sold directly from the fund company at the end of the trading day at the net asset value price calculated at the end of that day. ETFs, on the other hand, trade on an exchange throughout the trading day like a stock. This means their prices fluctuate throughout the day, and you can buy and sell them at any time throughout the day. Another difference is costs. Mutual funds tend to have higher expense ratios compared to ETFs, but with Vanguard's index funds, the difference in cost is negligible. For example, if we compare Vanguard's S&P 500 funds like VFIAX to the ETF version VOO, well, VFIAX has an expense ratio of 0.04% and VOO has an expense ratio of 0.03%. In this case, it's only a difference of 0.01%. That's 10 cents difference per $1,000 invested each year. But looking at the 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year returns between the mutual fund and the ETF, they are exactly the same, even though VFIAX's expense ratio is that 0.01% higher. So the returns seem to be exactly the same in the long run. Another difference, though, are the minimum investments. The minimum investment with these mutual funds is $3,000. Now, once you have that $3,000 and are able to buy into the fund, from that point on, you can invest any amount you'd like. With the ETF, though, the minimum investment is only $1 to get your foot in the door and buy a fractional share of the ETF. This is probably of little significance for most of us, but it's something to be aware of. The other difference has to do with automated investments. At Vanguard, currently the only way to set up automated investments is by using mutual funds. So if you want to have a certain amount of money go into or out of a fund on a regular schedule, like the first day of the month or something like that, you can only do that with Vanguard's mutual funds. You can't do it with their ETFs. I have a feeling, though, that this ability will come to Vanguard at some point because other brokerages do offer the ability to automate investments into ETFs, including Fidelity. But as of today, you can't do it at Vanguard, and that's important to know. Especially if you're using automated investing currently, well, you might not want to convert your mutual funds into ETFs for this reason alone. Alright, so why would you want to convert your mutual funds to ETFs? Well, if we look at this handy chart that Vanguard has created, we can see the differences between the two at a glance. I've already discussed the differences that they highlight here except for tax efficiency. And ETFs in general tend to be more tax efficient than mutual funds, but at Vanguard, the ETF functions as a separate share class of the mutual fund, so it's all the same pool, and the mutual fund versions and ETF versions are equally tax efficient. No difference there. So those are the differences between a mutual fund and its ETF at Vanguard. But these are pretty small differences, and they are probably not compelling enough to bother with converting your mutual funds to ETFs. But there is one other difference, and that is that ETFs are more portable. The thing is, mutual funds act as kind of a lock-in to Vanguard because you can't simply move your mutual fund holdings to any brokerage. For example, if you wanted to move your mutual fund holdings to Robinhood, let's say, it's not going to work. You can't invest in those mutual funds at Robinhood, but you can invest in ETFs there. So you would need to convert your Vanguard mutual funds to ETFs first and then transfer them over. Now, some brokerages like TD Ameritrade, Interactive Brokers, and Fidelity do offer Vanguard mutual funds, and you may be able to transfer them over to different brokerages like this, but they often have fees or commissions for transactions of mutual funds that are outside of their own mutual fund offerings. For example, Schwab and Fidelity both seem to be rocking a $75 transaction fee for the Vanguard S&P 500 fund. $75. Yikes. So it gets messy and potentially expensive to try to invest in Vanguard mutual funds outside of Vanguard. But Vanguard ETFs are a different story. They can be bought and sold fee and commission free at many brokerages. So if you want to move away from Vanguard as a brokerage, the solution is to convert those mutual funds to their equivalent ETFs first, and then your investments are much more portable. And that is exactly why I just converted my mutual funds at Vanguard into ETFs, to keep them portable in case I want to move away from Vanguard to another brokerage. Because if I do make that switch, I still want to be invested in the excellent Vanguard funds, just not through Vanguard the brokerage. So now let's talk about exactly how to convert mutual funds to ETFs at Vanguard without incurring any capital gains taxes. Here's what my account looked like before I did the conversion. You can see my positions listed. They are grouped by mutual funds. I have 3 different mutual funds, and then below those 3 different ETFs. And at the end of this conversion process, I'll just have a section of ETFs, no mutual funds. Now, to be extra safe, I even downloaded my unrealized cost basis report and took some other screenshots just to make sure everything was going to look as it's supposed to before and after the conversion. For example, I want to make sure that all the balances look the same before and after. Now, if you're going to convert your mutual funds at Vanguard to ETFs at Vanguard, don't bother digging through the disorganized maze of menus to figure out how to do this. You won't find that option. If you're lucky, you might stumble across this document which shows the Vanguard Index mutual funds which can be converted tax-free to Vanguard ETFs. But even this document doesn't tell you how to do it. You won't find the answer anywhere on Vanguard's site, and I'm sorry to say, the answer is you have to call them. I know, the horror. But in my experience, it wasn't so bad. I just called their regular old personal investor line, and in less than 10 minutes, it was a done deal.
Thanks for calling Vanguard. I have your information of how can we help you today.
So I'm calling because I want to convert my mutual funds into ETFs.
Yeah, we would have to do that for you to avoid it being a taxable event. So there is a required disclosure that we'll go over, and an ETF conversion is irreversible. Vanguard ETF shares cannot be converted back to Vanguard mutual fund shares. Covered shares will carry over with the set cost basis method at the time of conversion. Individual lots will be listed and locked and cannot be edited. The cost basis for all shares of the mutual fund will carry over to the ETF in 2 business days. So if you check your account on Monday, you'll see that you have the ETF in place of the mutual fund. And just as a reminder, this is not a taxable event.
Perfect. All right. Thank you for your help with this. I appreciate it.
So this is a one-way situation. You can convert from those mutual funds to ETFs, but there's no going back from ETF to mutual fund. So you'd better be sure about this before you go through with it. So again, I made this call after the trading day on a Friday, and then when I checked my account 2 days later on Sunday, the conversion was already showing. When I logged in, my account looked like this. And you can see now I don't have any mutual funds listed. It's only ETFs. that mutual fund section is gone completely, and my mutual funds have been converted. VFIAX is converted to VOO, VFWAX is converted to VEU, and VTIAX is now converted to VXUS. And I already had all three of those ETFs before, so the converted amount just gets lumped onto the amount I already had. And that's all there is to it. All of my mutual funds, except for the money market fund, VMFXX, they've all been converted over to ETFs. And now the only question is whether I'll stay at Vanguard or move these investments to a new brokerage. I'm not so sure about Vanguard these days. I'm looking at other options out there, and you can learn more about my thoughts in this video here.